This gentleman here, please.
Yeah, well, one of the things I'm concerned about the whole process of the way government does these processes, but I mean, I see the whole proposal from Molonglo as being an environmental travesty. They're not really. It's not going to be in the vanguard of best urban design, even though they originally was touted as that. I'll put an article from the Chronicle a couple of years ago where Simon Corbell is quoted as saying it would be. But we're finding houses are going to be facing west and so on. Anyway, so there's that question. I don't think they've really assessed things properly and fully. I mean, in one of their brochures, I pointed out, they'd originally said there would be 20,000 homes, 55,000 people. Then when it comes to the draft variation and the preliminary assessment, suddenly it's gone to 33,000 and 73,000 people. So, I mean, where did that come from? Can you trust them? The other thing too, this brochure said that if the development was approved, there would be an EIS. All we've got is a preliminary assessment. So a paltry assessment, a pathetic assessment. But the other question is, as purely as a resident of Weston Creek, I live in Warramanga, and I went to high school here, I came back here recently, but I've always been in Canberra, I've always been visiting Canberra as well. What do I, as a resident, get out of this? I mean, I think some of the questions are coming up. People are seeing that there's going to be potential stresses on our resources as residents here, and they're not doing it into a later. They're not saying, you're not really seeing any great potential employment opportunities for people to shorten the distances they have to travel and so on. So we're getting a loss of amenity here. And then there's the whole environmental impact questions, the wildlife, there's a bit of a gem, it's sort of been hidden away, at the moment it's fairly inaccessible. Anyway, I'm talking too much, so I should, I just think these issues are not being addressed. So there's a bigger picture thing, the whole issue of climate change, water stress, so on, has not been properly considered. Who says 500,000 people is the appropriate size for Canberra? Right.
Hi, I'm Stanford Harrison. I live in Fisher, and my association is with the Irana School. It has been for about 12 years or so, and so I'm fairly familiar with that little bit of the world. The things which have come out for me this evening, there's quite a few things that I quite like about the proposals that ACTPA was showing. But the things which I'm hearing which still need to be addressed have to do with that, in particular, that area of northwestern, the concerns, as we were saying before, about how much of the Arboretum really is going to be saved and in what form. The green buffer zones around what were originally quite rural character areas around the Irana School and the Sikh community and the Baha'is. And how that could be best preserved with greenish buffers, and so that it doesn't feel like a suburb that's encroaching upon areas which were, really built and with an open landscape in mind. So those sort of things, as people have already been highlighting, the need to preserve the ridge as an open area. And not allow it have the prospect of being overdeveloped. The need to pick up on those particular little wedge of houses that would come between the Baha'i and Sikh community. That was a very particular one. The prospect of 4-storey blocks of units overlooking the otherwise open school area. That's something which sort of stood out for me, as well as the broader issues of high-density development and ensuring that there's proper traffic control. So the particular where we started from, at least a while ago, about preserving green buffers, there still seems to be an issue that needs to be sorted. There's been concessions, but there seems to be more that needs to be done.
Can I just go a little bit about the approach that we've taken, which probably complements what you've just said, sir, is that we've we really would rather that there was no Molonglo and North Weston development at all. You know, we prefer that it wasn't there in the first place. However, government ministers, in all fairness, do have a number of things to balance up, and my children are quite young at the moment, but when they get a little bit older, I would like them to be able to afford a house to live in sometime. So I've got to recognise that there are some of those pressures that government ministers are under, and we've tried. I guess our approach is to try and make the best of what we can of this, and that means sort of trying to fight the battles. You know, I'm trying to identify some of the battles that we think we can fight and win. And the ridge top is an obvious one where we think we can still win that one and get that preserved as open space. But to stop these developments completely, I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, we have pushed a lot for some of these larger buffer areas, and we've managed to get some concessions there. The comeback that they always say to us is that, okay, if we have more space, more green space there, it means that we've got to take away green space somewhere else, and it's going to be further out. I'm only relaying what they say back to us. We say, well, can the block sizes be bigger? And then they'll say, well, okay, that means an extra new suburb. Okay, so some of you, it may come back to you that we've agreed on higher densities, and sometimes in order to, and I'll admit, in order to say reduce the density, to sort of try and say, well, if you don't build on the ridge, maybe you can increase the density there, because that makes more sense. So we have made some of those trade-offs, or suggested some of those trade-offs, but it doesn't mean that we actually endorse the whole thing. We're simply, as a community council, we're simply trying to put the views of the residents into the ears of the politicians. And ultimately, a lot of this, I would suggest, is a political issue. Who was next?
I'm Penny Salento, and I'm very much associated with the Rana School, as well as having been a resident in this area for many years. I have had to move out because of the housing shortage, so I don't actually agree that we shouldn't put new houses in. But I do disagree with the way that the development has been processed by ACLA. I also work for the Home Energy Advice Team, so I'm quite well versed with understanding how sustainable housing needs to be built. The things that I really appreciated about this, the presentation tonight was that they did actually show a lot more green zone and green buffering than was presented to us previously. They also showed us the areas that they, through lack of information, they showed us the areas that they're actually very touchy and dodgy on. So those are the points that we can actually work on, which is a really good thing. The other thing that I liked about this was the fact that they're still taking submissions. So they are still taking submissions to the 23rd to actually say, for all of us to say, we don't want it the way you are portraying it to us right now. We need to have assurance that we'll have some form of sustainability so that when our children are grown up, they can have a house that is actually going to be affordable for them. And we also need to make sure, so I read the entire submission range as well, and every single one of the submissions that went in mentioned sustainability. Now that's not been addressed in the presentation that we had tonight, nor has that actually been addressed in any of the presentations that we've been presented with. The ridges and saving green space is a part of the charm of Canberra. It's one of the reasons that we moved here initially in the first place, was because Canberra was such a beautiful green place. The streets were lovely, they were lined with green trees, there was a lot of a lovely feel about it. And that's what they're actually removing if they put a subdivision like this in, facing the majority of the houses. I don't know if you've had a look at the way the streets face. You can't build in any other way other than full west, which if you've ever lived in a full west facing house is very uncomfortable, particularly in summer. So, yeah.
Penny, you're talking about West, is that particular to Molonglo or North Western or the whole development?